A follower named Jason sent me this story. A few back years ago, I was driving home from college for Thanksgiving break. I was a freshman at the time, and it was the first real bit of freedom I had from a hectic schedule. Even though it was a long drive, I decided I would enjoy the time to think. Back then, I was still rather idealistic. I tried to see the good in everyone, and that often caused me to make mistakes. Most of the ride was nothing but cornfields in the middle of nowhere. I would hit a small town, then drive for miles through endless fields before reaching another. It got old quickly, and by late evening, I was getting very bored. That was when I noticed a guy walking along the side of the road all alone. Maybe it was because I felt like doing a good deed, or maybe it was just out of boredom, but I pulled over and offered him a ride. If you have ever picked up a hitchhiker, you know that sometimes you immediately regret it. That was the feeling I got. The guy looked only a few years older than me. He was lanky with long black hair and a scraggly beard. He wore dirty blue jeans and a Metallica t-shirt. None of that bothered me, though. My college campus was full of people who looked like that. What unsettled me was the way he talked. His name was Travis. After introducing himself, the first thing he asked me was if I had ever picked up a hitchhiker before. I told him I had done it once or twice when I was still living at home, usually giving rides to other high school students. After that, Travis started going on and on about hitchhikers, and it wasn't positive. He rambled about how dangerous it was to pick up strangers, asking if I had ever heard about serial killers who posed as hitchhikers at night. He then listed several killers who had done exactly that. A cold chill ran down my spine as he described how they committed their crimes and even how they could have done it better. I was about to ask him to get out when he suddenly reached into the pocket of his jacket and pulled out a pocket knife. My heart jumped, but I tried not to show it. He flipped open the blade and started cleaning his fingernails while I pretended not to notice. I asked him again where he wanted to go. He said he lived in a house just outside the next town. When I asked why he was so far from home, he told me he had been visiting friends who didn't offer him a ride back. I kept thinking of ways to get rid of him. That was when I noticed my fuel gauge was almost empty. We were in a town by then, and I knew I could find a gas station. My plan was to leave him in the car, go inside, and call the police. I told Travis I needed to grab fuel, and before long, I found a station. While I filled up, Travis sat inside the car still fiddling with his knife. I told him I was going inside to pay, but he jumped out of the car, knife in hand. He said, "I'll go inside with you. I think I could use a drink." My plan was ruined. I had no idea how I could get the clerk to call the police with Travis right there. Thinking quickly, I pretended I had left my wallet in the car. I told him to go inside and grab whatever he wanted and that I would pay for it. He gave me a suspicious look, but then headed inside. As soon as he walked through the door, I went straight back to my car, but I saw him watching me from inside the station. My hands shook as I started the engine. The moment the car roared to life, Travis burst out of the store, running at me with the knife raised. I slammed the car into drive and sped away as he screamed at me to come back. That was never going to happen. I drove straight to the police department, not only because of Travis, but because I had another problem. I had just driven away from the gas station, which is a crime. I explained everything to the police, and they escorted me back to the station so I could pay the clerk. Thankfully, by that time, Travis was long gone.
A follower named Hannah sent me the story. So this happened to me earlier, and I do not think I will be sleeping tonight. I am currently staying in a remote part of the United Kingdom, taking a break from work. That means more time to pursue my hobbies, and one of those is photography. I had scoped out a creepy-looking tree formation in a nearby forest. As the sun was going down, I set up my camera and tripod to capture that extra eerie vibe. While I was happily taking photos, I noticed a woman pass the entrance to the arched trees. She had parked her car next to mine when I arrived. She walked past me a couple of times, each time staring at me for a little too long. I assumed she wanted to use the path but saw me taking photos, so she wandered off somewhere else. About 5 minutes later, she appeared again, this time walking directly toward me. She dragged her left side slightly, moving with a strange limp. She stopped once to stare at me, then continued forward. I called out to ask if she was okay. By then, I had already started packing up my gear, and I had my tripod ready to use for self-defense if necessary. Something about her presence felt very wrong. She began to grunt at me, then stopped and stared again. When she got close enough, I realized with shock that it was not a woman at all, but a man dressed in women's clothing with a wig. An uncomfortable silence hung in the air before he started grunting again. He then moved to the side of the path, scooped up a pile of leaves, and began throwing them around while making more noises. After that, he wandered aimlessly into the forest. I immediately called my friend, told her what happened, and asked her to stay on the phone with me in case the man returned. I wanted to take just a few more photos before leaving, no longer than 10 minutes. As I worked, I heard the crunch of leaves moving in circles around me in the forest. I tried to convince myself it was only wildlife, but then the sound stopped completely. I finished my photos, and after about 15 minutes of no sign of him, I assumed it was safe. I left the path and noticed that the car parked beside mine was gone too. Relieved, I thought I was finally in the clear. But as I walked back, I suddenly saw a man approaching me from the entrance. It was the same person, only now dressed in men's clothing. As he passed by, he gave me an evil grin that sent shivers down my spine. I do not scare easily, but this man gave off every possible wrong signal. A heavy wave of dread washed over me. I was still on the phone and kept my tripod slung over my shoulder in case he tried anything. I quickened my pace and reached my car. Just as I got in, I saw him come out of the lane I had been on, looking around before starting to walk toward my car with intent. I began recording him for a moment, then wasted no time getting out of there. As I sped off, I passed his car parked further down the road. I remembered thinking to myself, what in the world had just happened? Thanks to Hannah for sharing this story.
A follower named Sarah sent me this story. My husband and I were stopping over in New York before heading to our temporary home in Poland. We had been living there for about a year, and we were originally from Australia. Having spent much of that year traveling through some of the shadier parts of Europe, we thought we were prepared for any strange situations. We were exhausted as we walked through JFK, ignoring all the people offering special taxis or rides. We went outside and waited in line with the rest of the tired and irritated travelers. When it was our turn, the taxi driver suddenly walked off. Another man stepped up, took our bags, and since the motor was already running, I did not think much of it. I insisted on taking my own bag and tried to open the trunk, but the man snapped at me sharply. Startled, I said it was fine. I would just keep it on my lap. My husband and I had traveled light, with only one suitcase between us. He asked the man to open the trunk anyway, otherwise there would be no room for us in the back seat. The man already looked irritated, but he yanked the trunk open. I had not yet gotten into the car. Out of paranoia, I never climbed into taxis first. I had heard too many kidnapping stories to take that risk. That was when I saw it. As the man quickly tried to close the trunk again, I caught a glimpse of something inside. It was not spread across the whole floor, but there was a section that looked a lot like fresh blood. The spot was wet, and even in the dim light, I could see older, darker stains around it. My stomach dropped. Before I could react, he shoved our suitcase in and slammed the trunk. Now I was wide awake and had no desire to get in that taxi. Everything felt wrong. "Come on, what's the holdup? Get in the taxi," the man barked, while other angry travelers waited for their turn behind us. I tried to get my husband's attention, but he was already in the back seat. If this were a horror movie, I would have been screaming at the screen, "Don't get in that cab." But I got in anyway, clutching my bag on my lap. The ride was terrifying. We whipped around corners, the brakes slammed constantly, and I felt sick with anxiety. I could not stop thinking about what I had seen. Was it really blood? Then I realized something worse. We were not going the right way. I like to prepare and know where I am, and this was not a scenic detour to overcharged tourists. This was wrong. "Hey, where are you going?" I blurted out. The driver gave no response. He did not flinch, move, or say a word. "Are we really going the wrong way?" My husband, not one to back down, turned on the man. "Hey, don't think you can screw with us. We're not paying more than agreed. Turn around and take us where we're going, or I'll call the cops." He had no idea why I was panicking, but I was certain we were about to be killed and dumped somewhere. My mind was racing. Maybe that really was blood in the trunk. Maybe this man had plans for us in some warehouse later. The driver suddenly slammed on the brakes at a red light. I muttered under my breath, "I'm pretty sure this isn't even a real taxi." "You see the sign up there? It's a taxi, moron," he snapped. "Then do your job," my husband shot back without hesitation. Maybe the man decided we were too much trouble, a loudmouth Aussie and his frantic wife snapping at him, because suddenly he turned onto the correct road and drove us toward the hotel. When we arrived, I checked the trunk again before we left. It was darker now, but I could still see shredded rags inside, stained with a deep rust color. Thanks to Sarah for sharing the story.
A follower named Emily sent me this story. This is a continuation of my last experience. A man had been following me home from school, and one day he grabbed my shirt from behind and tried to attack me with my own headphones. That is important to know, because the same man is still involved. He started walking back and forth on the sidewalk in front of my house. He had already done this 3 times since my last story. Every time I saw him, I was home alone. I called my mother each time, and we reported it to the police, but they said there was nothing they could do since he had not stepped onto our property. That changed this week. I began hearing tapping and scratching sounds outside as soon as it got dark. At first, I was too scared to look, and strangely, my dogs did not bark the way they usually would if a stranger was around. Eventually, I gathered enough courage to peek outside. That was when I saw someone hunched over near the entrance of our home. They wore a large hood pulled completely over their face, and I could not see any features. It looked like they were scraping something against the siding of the house. Terrified, I called the police and hid in case they tried to break in. As soon as the police arrived, the person bolted into the darkness faster than I thought possible. The officers did not chase them. After checking around, they said there was no proof of who the person was. At most, it was trespassing. I reminded them of the man who had attacked me before, insisting it was the same person, but they told me there was no evidence to prove that. I could not positively identify the figure outside, and since I hadn't been seriously injured in the earlier attack, they claimed there was nothing they could do. The next morning, a small brown package appeared on our doorstep. Inside were broken electronic parts, shards of plastic, and crumpled newspaper. On top of everything was a note. It read, "I'm sorry.
with a frowny face drawn beside it. My mother notified the police again, but once more they only said they would keep an eye on things. I feel like they will not do anything until I am attacked again, or worse. Following advice from people who know about situations like this, I now carry glitter spray when I walk home from school. I also keep a screwdriver and a knife in my room just in case someone tries to break in. But honestly, I do not feel confident that I could win in a fight against this man. I am constantly on edge. Even when the doors are locked, I check every possible place someone could hide before I settle down for the night. I do not think it is enough. More than anything, I just want him to leave me alone.
Thanks for sticking around till the end. If you enjoyed the story, don't forget to give the video a like and leave a comment with your thoughts. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a terrifying tale. See you in the next one.